Hey guys, welcome to Voice of Reason with Nathan. In today's episode, I wanted to share with you some insights on a question that I get quite often is, what does a good psychologist do? You know, how do I know if I'm going to see a good psychologist versus someone that's not as effective and so on? And I'm going to share with you an acronym. It's got 5 steps to it. And this is essentially a generalized model of what a good psychologist will do with you in therapy. And it's not an exhaustive guide or anything like that, but part of what I do and a lot of my colleagues will do in therapy with you. And the 5 steps are the acronym LEARN. So L stands for listen, then educate, approach, review, and then N stands for next steps. So again, listen, educate, approach, review, next steps. Learn. So let's learn what a good psychologist looks like. The L, listen. Number one key resource of any psychologist is to listen to the client, is to listen to you when you go in for therapy. They're listening. And it's not just listen so that they can then answer your question or try to fix you or tell you what they think you need to hear. It's more around just listening, validating, appreciating your viewpoint, appreciating where you're coming from. And that is so rare in today's day and age. Often in today's day and age in society, we want to give our own opinions. We want to just tell people our own mind and our own opinions. And opinions are like noses. Everyone's got one and they usually have a couple holes in them, right? So, you know, it's important to appreciate that a good psychologist will listen to you. Now, what I like to do is listen and validate the person, not necessarily the behavior. Because obviously the person's behavior may have been having an impact or an influence into why they're seeing me in the first place. So it's not all just well done, clap your hands, you know, appreciating everything the person's doing is fantastic. No, otherwise they wouldn't be there in the therapy room with you. So it's important to listen and validate the person for who they are, but not the behavior necessarily. And look, it is also important to validate the good behaviors, obviously even coming to therapy and willing to talk about things, the courage that takes, the willingness to you know, carve out time in a day, the cost to go and see someone, all of that is important to appreciate as well. And so listening is the number one key resource that any good psychologist will use. Now from listening, we have educate. So that's the second point there is psychoeducation. So helping the client to understand what's been happening from a psychological aspect, psychological point of view, using evidence-based practice approach. So it's not just telling, again, their own opinion or what they think or what they feel. It's about coming from an evidence-based approach to what's happening. That said, it's important to appreciate, again, where the client's coming from. So if I'm using, say, cognitive behavioral therapy and the client's more of like a feeler, they're more of a creative person, they may not connect very well with CBT. They may connect more with acceptance commitment therapy, for example. If they've got some borderline stuff going on, they might be better suited to dialectical behavior therapy or whatever it might be. So you're utilizing the different resources of psychoeducation that will match the client as well. And if you don't match the therapist and if you're just not clicking, then that's important to talk about that as well, so you can actually fit and be a good fit and work together. And in any therapy situation, it's a collaboration, or it should be. So if you're feeling like you're not connecting and they're just telling you what to do and you just, oh, here we go again, that's key to the therapy. And you need to talk about that with the therapist. And if they're a good psychologist, they're a good therapist, they will actually engage with you on that level. Try to understand what's not working, why is it not working, how can we work through this, problem solving, because any therapy session, it's a relationship, and often it's going to bring things up from your childhood, family dynamics, it's going to bring in all these aspects into the therapy. And if you don't talk about those issues, you're doing what you've always done, and that might be exactly the problem. It's actually often in therapy, it's not anything to do with the approach, not anything to do with whether it's CBT, ACT, DBT. It's to do with the relationship and how you guys mesh or don't mesh, and then working through those problems, you know, and being able to communicate, being able to, and that is the therapy, you know, the relationship. And a lot of research has been done regarding whether, you know, this particular approach is more effective on that or that approach. And of course, there's a lot of different research and information on that. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest factors is the actual relationship, what we call rapport with the client. Your engagement with that therapist, whether you trust them, whether you click, you know, connect, whether you can communicate openly and effectively with them, whether you feel heard and understood, all that kind of thing goes into it. And then the third step to this is approach. So we've got listen, educate, and then approach. And approach is, again, whether I'm using, you know, this evidence-based therapy or this one or that one, and even just my approach to the client. And again, your approach to the therapist, you know, how are we going to work through this? What are the practical steps? What are we going to use? How are we going to, you know, confront this issue head on? What steps do we need to take? And often what I'll do in my therapy is work out some goals that the client's working towards. Okay, so this is the big mess that we're in right now. It feels overwhelming and all of that. I like to use cognitive behavioral therapy, and so based on that model, how can we take this problem, let's break it down into bite-sized pieces. What are the goals and the steps that we need to work towards to move towards what we want to do here? And what is that? You know, what does that even look like? Well, I just want to be happy. Well, okay, that's not a goal. That's just a figment of your imagination. What does that really look like? What does that actually mean? You know, what would make me feel happy? And what would make me feel happy is the problem. It's you choosing to be happy because of the way you think and the process of your mental evaluations, the way you process information. That's what's going to make you happy because you're making those choices. And then your behaviors, are they in line with your value system? And this is something that I actually refer to as source code. And it's coming back to your life map, your value system, coming back to the source of where you're getting that information. And if you can filter the information you're getting from the world around you and even internally through your life map, and that's something that I've developed over many years with clients, you know, we look at, not that it takes many years to develop, but I've used this over the many years that I've worked with clients, and even in my own personal life, my life map, that knowledge base that I have, my values, if I'm filtering information through that, that will help me to more effectively manage my expressions, my behaviors, my thought processes, because not every thought you have is your thought. You know, it's important to realize that and be confident and firm in what you believe, in who you are, your identity, knowing where that's coming from. And for me, that is my faith. You know, that's God's word. If it doesn't line up with God's word, then I'm sorry, it's just not the truth. It might be true, but it's not the truth. And that isn't my approach. You know, I come from a Christian worldview. Now, if my client doesn't, if someone who comes to me is not a Christian, that's okay. I can still utilize evidence-based practice and approaches to help them and work through the behaviors, work through the emotions, work through, you know, that system of what's happening and what's gone wrong. And if they are a Christian, even better, because then we can work on that level as well, the spiritual aspect of things, and whether those thoughts and the beliefs they have about God are in line with their worldview and in line with the scriptures. You know, and as a psychologist, we're not ministers, we're not preaching, we're not trying to convert people. But if someone's coming to me from that aspect, that framework, you know, as a Christian, we can help them work through that. But as a psychologist, you need to be careful and not cross boundaries there and not become like a pastor to them. And it's important to appreciate the difference there. If you want to do that, if you want to preach at them, you want to share scriptures and all that, then be a pastor, you know, and be clear and open about that. But then don't try to, you know, be a psychologist with them as well. And that said, though, there is an important reality that we as psychologists, we're people, you know. And I know colleagues of mine who are fantastic psychologists, but they will approach the client from their worldview, you know. And if we're not careful, say you're going through a relationship difficulty with someone, they might encourage or be more supportive of divorce than, say, a Christian psychologist might. They might be more supportive of certain behaviors and certain things versus, say, someone who's got a biblical worldview. And so that's important to understand why, you need to click with the psychologist, you need to click with your therapist and make sure that you're on the same level there. And that said, look, they shouldn't be putting their worldview on you. That's just end of that. I don't do that for clients, and a good psychologist won't do that. But their approach, the practical steps, what are we working towards, their personal views on things is obviously going to have an impact on that to some degree. Number 4 is review. So we've got listen, educate, approach, and then review. Review is really about looking at how is it working. And each session, I like to review what we did last session. How's it been going? Was it effective this week? The things that we're working towards, say the breathing techniques, did you go and talk to that person? Have you been reflecting on, your journal? Have you been actually doing the steps that we've agreed to? Because it's a collaboration. And so, each session we review that and just see how we're going. Is it actually working? If it's not working, let's change it. Often clients won't keep going to therapy because they lose that sense of this is actually not working for me. And you got to think, like, if you've had this problem, like say for 10 years, or like let's say that you're going to therapy for the first time and you're like 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, however old you are, you've most likely developed this system, this internal framework that's based on a source code that's, even though it might be true and real for you, it's not the truth. And so you've developed this system that's not working, and it takes time to unravel that. It takes time to renew your mind. It takes time for that transformation to really have an impact on your soul level, on your internal framework. Now in your spirit, soul, body, in your spirit, you are brand new creation. You're just as Christ is, so are you in this world. But in your soul, you're being renewed, you're being transformed. There's a sanctification process that takes place in your soul, and you need to line up your soul. As an adult, you need to line up your soul to who you are in your spirit. And that can take time. And also your body. So your actions, your behaviors, how you function, how you interact with your environment, the environment you put yourself in as well. All of that has an impact on your soul as well. So you've got these two areas, the spirit and the body, that impact on your soul, but also your soul that impacts on your body, and so all these aspects that go into, restoring that system that's broken. And then the 5th step is next steps. So listen, educate, approach, review, and then next steps. So again, if it's working, great. Let's keep going. What's the next steps? What else do we need to do here? Do we need more therapy? If you feel like you're in a good place here, you've kicked those goals and they're clear, achievable targets, and we know it's working. Or are we ready to do something else? Do we need another approach? Do we need to review the problems, the problem-solving techniques that we're utilizing? Is there something else that we need to do here? And often it's just practice and time. A lot of clients think that, and me as well, like we want to rush to fix whatever the problem is, and we don't appreciate that it takes time to not just find the solution, but then experience the solution. It's not just enough to be like, yep, that's the answer, done, great, okay, I'm fine now, I'm fixed. And it is honestly simple, but it's complicated where it takes time to actually experience the solution and actually put the effort in, the time, and start to reap the benefits of that. We're in a microwave society. We just want to put it in the micro, 30 seconds, done, let's eat, and that might work for some problems, but the meal that you get from that, the sustenance, the nutrition, is very minimal compared to a full-on, beautiful home-cooked dinner like I had last night. It was amazing. And it's very different to that kind of experience, and it just takes time and effort. That's all it is, and that's okay. And even in, say, the faith movement, it's like quick fix. I'm just going to pray a prayer and it's all going to be magical and fixed and wow, No, it takes time, seed, time and harvest. And at times, you don't see the results straight away. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Don't lose heart. Continue in that process. You've planted the seed. You're putting in the effort, the time, the energy. You're going to reap those benefits. And the same with your soul, in your body, with any important decisions, any things that take time. it takes time, and you get better benefits from that, the seed time and harvest principle. And so that's my 5-step acronym, LEARN acronym. Again, that's listen, educate, approach, review, and next steps. And that's what a good psychologist will do with you, essentially. It's a generalized kind of overview of what happens. There's a lot more to be said about it, of course, but I hope that just helps you, and maybe you want to take that for your own self as well. Maybe you can learn as well. So listen, educate, approach, review, and next steps for your own life. Take that and maybe write down those steps and, what you can actually do in those different areas. What can you listen to in regards to what you're thinking and feeling and how you're going in your own life. How can you educate yourself? Where do you need to grow? What areas do you need to improve in? All that sort of stuff, and give yourself the time to actually experience those solutions. So I hope this has blessed you and helps you guys. Be blessed.